Alright class, this is the third group I'll be critiquing, and this is starting with Jermaine's work. Jermaine did cheesecake, and let's take a look at his denotative. This is his denotative, and this is the connotative. So it looks like we're using color, which is great. It's part of the assignment. If you wanted to use color, you can. So we are looking at the information very simple, straightforward, to the point. Everything is nicely aligned to the left side of the page. I probably would say do the same with the vanilla flavor subtitle over here. Now, this is good, but let's try to take this a step further. I know this is your denotative, but let's see if we can bring some pizzazz to your denotative. Right now it's looking a little on the bland side. So let's say if we have the ingredients and filling area right here, and maybe you don't need this much space in between your area where you talk about your filling, and maybe the cooking and instructions can go on this side, or it could be treated a little bit differently. So let's just add a little bit more to your layout for your denotative. And remember, this is cheesecake. So what is it about cheesecake that makes this so interesting? So is it the layering happening of the cheesecake? Is it a specific flavor? So in this case, you talk about vanilla. So maybe there's areas of color that are highlighted, maybe say in the brown color in which vanilla comes in, the vanilla bean. Or maybe there's a different type treatment that you bring into your instructions. You just want to make sure you have your no space in between instructions. So just a little bit more levels of hierarchy. Okay, so let's just work on that for your next round. And then let's go into your connotative. So I like that we're using the solid colors as the backgrounds. One thing that I would recommend is we're still not doing that to our text. Our text seems to be still in the denotative approach. So let's see if we can bring in some connotation in here. So I know we say cheesecake, yum, vanilla, but let's try to say something else with this area right here where we talk about the filling, we talk about the ingredients. Maybe there's something about this particular cheesecake that we can bring a little bit more, just a little bit more excitement, So we're seeing the excitement in color. That's great. But we'd like to see a little bit more of this done typographically, because remember, this is not an illustration. We're not trying to create an illustration in any way. We still want to be experimental with our type. So try to bring in a little bit more emotion into your layout. So if this were something for a particular restaurant, say the Cheesecake Factory, and you want to be very experimental with your recipe. So entice your viewer a little bit more and see how you can really break up some of this information and just kind of bring more expression into your layout. I hope that makes sense and it's pretty clear. But I think your overall sense of typography is very clean in overall and in general. So we do see a specific level of read and how easy it is to read this, but let's just add a little bit more expression and exploration of the typography. Okay? This is Celina's work. Celina did vegetable lasagna, so it looks like, I believe this is your denotative and this is your connotative over here. So let's kind of take a look at what's going on over here. So one thing I would recommend is leave a little bit more space around your layout. Right now it's getting too close to the edges and it's a little too busy in certain areas like here where we have the text overlapping the V over here, and the V has a gradient and it's got an outline going on. So I personally would get rid of the outline and see if we can create a more cleaner gradient. I would say something that goes from a red to a yellow where lasagna is, so that way we're not doing too much gradients on each and every one of those letter forms. So just to kind of simplify a little bit more. If you're trying to work with the direction of the type, I'd say maybe follow the direction of the V and try to stick to that as your grid, similar to what you're doing over here with the L. So just a little bit more intention with your layout and just a little bit more white space in general. Okay. I would say for this particular one, vegetable lasagna seems very simple and straightforward to read. Again, let's just do something about the gradient where we're seeing not a gradient on each and every one of those letter forms, but something that goes from red to yellow, from the top to the bottom, or something where it's just a little bit more, less movement to the eye. And then we start to get into areas such as the ingredients and then the instructions. I like what you're doing with the layering. Let's see if we can actually choose a different kind of approach from the instructions and the ingredients and see if there's a way we can separate the two. You can still maintain what you have over here, but maybe there's something different that separates the ingredients from the instructions. I'm not sure what it is. Could be a color, could be something that just gives a little bit more hierarchy to what we read as the ingredients and the instructions. And I think if this is going to be a pull quote, let it cool and enjoy. Let cool and enjoy. Maybe treat this a little bit differently from the rest of the type. I also would like to see a little bit more more on your layout. Again, like how do we take a look at ingredients and instructions on the overall page? Because in general, I don't mind a very middle or centered axis for our type, but I just feel like we can use a little bit more white space around the edges just so that we can see a bit more of the background. And vegetable and lasagna can go a little bit smaller too. So see if there's something we can kind of add to the layout in general, where we're not just stacking text one on top of the other. See how you can divide your page a little bit more in an interesting way. Then I hope this helps. I think this, in general, is a good try for you. It just needs maybe another round. And I think you will see that you will start to see more interesting things happen to your recipe. Okay? This is Christian's work. Christian did kebabs. This looks like the denotative and the connotative, I believe. So Christian, a few things. I'd like to see a little bit more experimentation with the type, especially when it comes to your connotative. I think what we did here is just work with the title. We didn't do much to the text, so we also want to make sure we maintain some white space on our layout. So we can see the text is coming a little too close to the edge, so we want to bring that out a little bit more so we can see the edge of the page, right? And we want to bring in a little bit more connotation into areas of the text over here, yet still maintain readability. I like what you're doing here where the white goes into the letter forms over here, and I wonder if this is something you can do with like the rest of the information of your ingredients list or your instructions, but maybe kebabs can go much bigger and you have areas where you can overlap the white and the black, the shape of the black letter forms, and then the white kind of overlap that. So try to bring in a little bit more intention into your layout, but be more considerate and just in general, see if there's something that we can bring in terms of like expression and interest into the page. Remember, this is kebabs. Kebabs come in different shapes and sizes, and they're very flavorful. And there must be something about this recipe that brings some of that punchy, pizzazz-like flavor to the recipe, especially to your viewer. So imagine this is a recipe you're giving to a viewer and you want them to make it. Well, try to make it exciting for them. I think you're starting something over here, but let's try something in the rest of the other areas of your recipe. I think this is nice, taking a look at the stacking of the letter forms here, kind of like the stacking of the meat, the veggies on top of each other on a skewer, so I like that. And you've done that in a subtle way. See if we can use a font that might be a little bit different than what we're seeing here, because it's starting to look a little too cartoony. And I don't mind something like this which is more hand-drawn, but I would like a more cleaner font to use, like a sans serif or a serif font, just something a little bit cleaner. But this is looking a little too cartoony for me, so let's get rid of that. Okay. And let's bring a little bit more structure to your page. Like, we have some structure over here on the right side, which is great. Let's try to see if there's something here on this other right-hand side of the page that we can do to the layout. I hope this helps, and this kind of sheds some light on what are some things you can do for your next part of your assignment for round 2. Let's go to Kira's work. Kira did baked candied yams. So it looks like we divided the information nicely for the denotative. One thing we would say is, in general with typography, we want to make sure that we don't go over 9 to 13 words per line. Because right now we're starting to see that the information is starting to look really long to read on the page, and we're not having enough white space, quite frankly, to give us that sense of ease of readability. So I'm not sure what I'm supposed to read first. Am I reading baked candied yams first? Am I reading ingredients second, and instructions third? So just a little bit more deliberate moves in your layout. I like where you're going with the different types of orientation of your letter forms. But let's try to see if there's a way that we can not make the I just so dominant so that we read instructions first and ingredients first, so it doesn't compete with the title. Okay, so there's a few areas we can kind of focus on. And careful with areas like this where we're starting to overlap the text or bring the text a little too close to other parts of the format here. Again, just more white space, just so we're not covering the entire page with text. So it's a little bit easier to read. Because remember, again, we are trying to convince our reader to make this particular recipe. So we want to make sure that we're presenting this in a way that's nice and readable, also easy to read too. So that's for the denotative approach. Your connotative is still very difficult to read. I think we still need to scale back and kind of simplify those different effects that you're doing. I definitely can't read any of this. It's just very hard to read, especially when using gray and the Gaussian blur in some parts. So I would say do another round for this where maybe we do see some warping of the text happening with the title and subtitle, but I think some areas like this, you're definitely losing readability here, and we need to see if we can bring this back to a place where we can read, and you know, still maintain that sense of expression, which is conveying baked candied yams. All right. So please take a look at this and see if there's something we can bring back in terms of readability. Okay? I believe this was 4 people that we have critiqued right now. I will see you in the next video, which will be group 4.